And we told you about that interview, right? And Mamavi also is at the forecourt of the head office of the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice here in Accra. And Mamavi, you're ready. Who are you speaking to? Can you just give us a gist of what really we should whet our appetite for?
Oh, have I?
Well, Roland Walker, I think I want to remain here. I don't want to ever come back. But today is Social Justice Day. It's February 20, 2017. And you know what they say, we advance the cause when we clear barriers that people face. We're talking barriers such as age, ethnicity, disability, you name them. So today we've come to Shraj, really, to have a conversation. We want to see how much of those barriers we've been able to clear as a country. And it's actually a privilege to have the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice join this conversation in his own backyard, really. Good morning to you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you
for allowing us to be here.
Yeah. Let me welcome you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also joining the conversation is a man that we all have come to love because of how daring he's been, taking on cases that other lawyers really will not dare go close. Francis Xavier Sosu, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here.
Yeah. What's your latest case?
I think the very latest has been Eric Asante, who suffered 15 years in prison before he was acquitted and discharged by the Supreme Court. So we are working on him to ensure that he get reinstated back into the Ghana Education Service and possibly get some compensation for him, and yeah, a couple of others that we are working on.
Okay.
With time, I'm sure they will.
How much compensation are we looking at?
Well,
it should be a lot of money.
Yeah, obviously, money cannot compensate for the loss of life and opportunities to life that he has suffered. But we are looking at something. We are proposing 10 million Ghana cedis. I know the state may not pay 10 million Ghana cedis, but at least it will be a bargaining point and see what we can get for him.
Commissioner, good morning again. Morning. Congratulations to you. I think it's appropriate.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. There's a difference between being deputy and being commissioner.
Yes.
What's the difference?
The difference is that the buck ends with me.
Yeah.
Now everything, I have no excuse to say, oh, the commissioner didn't give me the permission. I have to make sure that every decision that is supposed to be taken is taken.
Yeah.
And so when you called me and said, do you want to come? You want to come over here? I said, please, come. You're welcome.
It's good to have you head in the commission, really.
Thank you.
But you've been here for quite some time.
Yeah.
What does a day for social justice mean to you and the commission?
It means quite a lot of things. One, a commission that has been set up to promote and enforce fundamental human rights. Our target being the fight against or fighting for the vulnerable. And so a day in the life of the commission would encompass making sure that we have issues of disability streamlined when they come before us, issues of women and children directly enforced, issues of any other person's rights that come before us pushed. Because justice is all about ensuring that everybody gets the right to be heard and for the human rights to be enforced. That's what it's all about.
Who has access to justice in Ghana? But I won't quite start with you. I'll start with Francis. Who do you think has access to justice in Ghana?
I think the Constitution guarantees justice for all Ghanaians, both the rich and the poor, the young and the old, the have and the have-nots, as we've come to know these terms. However, in practice, what I have realized over these few years of my legal practice is that it is only those who have the money who are able to afford justice in Ghana, because it's quite expensive accessing justice in Ghana. Secondly, it is those who come from homes, influential homes, people whose parents or uncles are politically connected or have people in the corridors of power who can intervene when matters, or when things happen, to them. We have had situations in our courts where you have members of parliament or some ministers of state personally come to court because this case concerns us. And perhaps it's just a defilement matter. It may be about some other person, maybe in some corner in Medina, and nobody really cares. We've had matters like that where the victims, are not protected because nobody follows up. We have tried in some few cases to hold watching brief for some of them. But, quite frankly, how many can you do? We have a lot of complaints of them, but we are also constrained. So as much as we can do, we do. But there are many others who are out there who are not protected at all, and who don't have access to justice at all because they do not have the money to afford lawyers, they don't have parents who are influential, and they don't have anybody who is politically connected to follow up their cases.
Mr. Whittal, that is the area where you should be failing, correct?
Exactly, and but let me just first acknowledge that Francis has actually hit the nail right on the head. But the question is, why should the motto of Ghana be freedom and justice, indicating that justice as a principle is something that Ghana puts up foremost? Why should access to justice by Ghanaian citizens become an issue? It means that we have misplaced our priorities. Justice should not be up for the highest bidder. It shouldn't be, as he has mentioned. It shouldn't be because of money. It shouldn't be. So we need, on the day of social justice, as we are celebrating, we need to begin to recall where are we going? If you cannot even give your people ordinary justice, and you have set up courts, you put judges, lawyers are making a living out of that, and the ordinary person cannot access justice, then there's a big issue. Of course, the Commission fills in. We are also there. We have been put there by the Constitution directly to support the vulnerable. And from the numbers that we have, you'd see that we are also pulling our weight there. On the average, if you have about 13,000 cases coming to the Commission nationwide, mostly from the vulnerable.
Are we talking monthly, yearly?
No, annually.
Okay.
13,000. And the throughput being about 10,000, 11,000 completed cases in a year, where there is no fee charged, where lawyers are not necessarily required, because we tend to become the lawyers, where the settlement process is made more friendly because it's informal. And we try to make sure that whatever disputes that people have brought, they should be able to go back and live their lives together again. And unfortunately, you are not able to get enough budgetary support for us to expand. Because we are in only 100 districts. We should be in all the districts as the Constitution allows. But there are some districts right now that are not served by us. So the question then is, where are we going? So if the costs are expensive, if the ordinary man cannot even pay for transport to come to court, and if he comes to court, he has to pay filing fees, that is beyond his reach, then we have to begin to change our tack and begin to restore the institutions that can fall back and soak the heat.
Let me just, you said 13,000 cases come to you and you're able to solve 10,000 of...
Between 10 to 11,000 a year.
Okay, so
on the average.
Can you tell us, for instance, what are some of the cases that would come typically to Shraj? Apart from, the famous ones that we hear, there's somebody writing to the Commission to investigate Parliament, for instance, for some bribery allegation.
Those are really those are not very critical to us. We are targeting the vulnerable, and because the vulnerable involve women, children, and the disabled, who are mostly in the rural countryside, most of the cases are about children, about women, and about ordinary disputes that, when solved, would make people live their lives and be more comfortable.
But we hardly hear of some of these cases.
Because you hardly come to church. We expect that journalists should show interest beyond the sensational cases such as the bribery allegations in Parliament. You should be interested in coming to find out how many cases of child abuse, human trafficking, maintenance, irresponsible parents not taking care of their children, school fees. Those are the human-centered issues that I think
But you
I
also
challenge
don't
you to come forward.
You also don't publicize your own works?
We do. We send an annual report to Parliament every year. I admit that we are a bit behind time in terms of some number of reports that should have been in Parliament, but it's all about the money.
So right now you are heavily under-resourced.
That is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will come and talk about it, but let me talk to Francis now, because Francis has been involved in a lot of cases. What would you say? Some of the things that you take up could also be channeled through Shraj.
Yes.
Have you tried to collaborate with Shraj in the work that you've done?
I must say that, I mean, Shraj has been a very able partner in what we do. And I must commend Shraj for what they do, despite the kind of constraints under which they work. I mean, sometimes when I come to Shraj, I feel sad. I feel sad because this is the only constitutional ombudsman that we have in this country for now. This is the only constitutionally established body that is supposed to supervise all administrative institutions and all kinds of injustice perpetrated against people, including the social justice matters that the commissioner just talked about. But when you even come here, look at the compound of Shraj, look at the offices of Shraj. It's heavily under, resourced, and like you rightly said, we are actually violating the Constitution to the extent that we have not resourced Shraj to have offices in all the districts that we have in Ghana. Because then what it means is that people in those districts, do not have access to the only institution that is supposed to follow up and ensure and enforce their fundamental human rights. And over the years, we have most of the petitions that we do, either to Attorney General or to other institutions, we've always copied Shraj. And one of the most interesting and wonderful things we've always had is that whereas we would never, ever have any letter of acknowledgement from any of these institutions, Shraj will always write to you and say that we acknowledge receipt of your letter and we are taking steps on your letter.
However, we don't have money to do anything.
It's completely amazing to me because we've sent, petitions to either PIPS, we've sent petitions to IOCO, we've sent petitions to National Security, to the ministries and Attorney General, but nobody would ever acknowledge any receipt of any letter and even assure you that we are doing something about that. And I feel that is quite impressive. And quite apart from that, you would recall that in collaboration with Joy FM, we did a story on Christopher Bama, the 16-year-old boy who was brutally assaulted by some military men. This was a case we petitioned Shraj about. And to the credit of Shraj, unlike many other institutions, Shraj actually conducted investigation into this matter. I sat in a number of interviews with our clients and the many assurances that we have. Indeed, we are yet to receive that report, final report from Shraj, and we are looking forward to receive that report from Shraj. However, I believe that is something that, some positive work had been done on, and I think it is something that needs, to be commended. Even though we are really, in fact, we've actually written to Attorney General that if we do not receive the final report from Shraj and the state does not do anything about it, we would have no choice than to resort to the international, community court, because then Shraj being part of the national, if you like, institutions, then we would construe the entire thing to be the state failing and its responsibility if we don't see anything done in respect of that matter. So I'm hopeful that even now that we have Mr. Uta here, we probably will even have some assurance that maybe this week or receiving that report.
I was just going to say that, Commissioner Whittle, maybe you have some updates. Sorry to...
I would have even asked for a comment on that, because to assure my good friend Susu and the people of Ghana, we have actually completed the investigation.
Wow.
The only thing required now is for the military high command to release the 2 or 3 military officers involved, for them at least to be given the natural justice right or opportunity to confront the findings of charge. And we've written to the military high command. We are waiting for that. And when that release is done, we'll wrap up the report within a week. Yeah.
Okay.
If we can have the military officers at least for 3 hours, we would issue the report.
How does that make you feel?
I mean, it makes me feel good, but it makes me also think that, you know, this is a matter that we believe that to some limited extent, the military high ranks have failed in their duty, or perhaps are seeking to protect their own. Because, I mean, it's not everything that you put on air, but I recall that when this matter happened, I've had a lot of, you know, anonymous calls that have actually asked that we do something. You know, in Ghana, when we say do something, that's what I mean. In other words, if you can cover up, if you can do something, if you can reduce what it would take. But we have just been determined that we are not going to let this matter die, because it happened to Christopher Obama. It can happen to any other person. And you know, in recent times, if you would watch, and I'm happy that on this day of social justice, we are having this conversation, that even in just past 2 weeks, there have been lots of issues of mob action, you know, lynching of people, brutality. People are being subjected to dehumanizing, you know, and treatment, degrading treatment, which violates our constitution. But nothing has been done about this. So I believe that this platform should serve as a notice to the CDI, is it the
CDS.
The CDS, yeah, Chief of Defense Staff, that he needs to do something about this. It's unacceptable. The people of Ghana wants to know what happened. So these military men must be released to Shraj, so that at least they can confront the piece of evidence against them, so that Shraj can release their final report for us to see how we end this matter.
This issue also brings to mind proactiveness of Shraj. Are you like a complaint center that people just have to walk in and complain before you take a certain action? Or once you hear some of these stories, even on our airwaves, then you can take an action on your own?
Well, I think the framers of the Constitution preferred a complaint-driven commission, at least for the mandates of human rights and the ombudsman. But for corruption, no. For corruption allegations, Shraj can on its own go ahead, investigate and issue a report. But when it comes to violations of fundamental human rights, administrative injustice, the constitution makers require a complaint from an identifiable complainant.
So even when you've heard and seen on television a story that people have lynched someone in Kumasi, for instance, you wait for somebody to come and formally make that complaint. Is there something that you would love as commissioner for it to change?
Certainly. It looks absurd, because why would a human rights activist see something happening and not be able to act just because there is a requirement for a complaint first from anybody to come? Looks absurd. But we are thinking that in the course of the constitutional review processes, the opportunity will be given for that to be amended, because the Constitutional Review Commission has actually recommended that charges, all the mandates of charge should not be triggered by the need for a complaint. So that is something we are looking forward to.
But this also brings to mind, as citizens, we also have some responsibilities to play. Sometimes we watch some of these things happen. How do we even begin to start the conversation of stopping?
Good. For me, before I even get to the citizenship or the obligations of a citizen, can we all agree that Article 12 of the Constitution, which Sosu relies on a lot, requires the judiciary, the legislature, all organs of state every person in Ghana to respect the fundamental human rights of anybody. So it is not as if the matter needs to go to court or come to trial or go to any adjudicating body. It means by the constitutional fiat, you must ensure that when you are considering anything, you have the human rights dimension of that matter in mind. So to what extent are we all doing that? Decisions that are taken in the public services, do they consider the human rights ramifications or implications before they are done? Nobody does that. Now, coming to responsibilities of the citizen, we all have a responsibility to protect the rights of any person who we see engaged or in any problems. For instance, if we see mob action, why would you get up and run and follow and also go and throw stones when you know that a life is involved and that it is inappropriate to take the law onto yourself and administer instant justice without first letting the law processes take their course? So we all have a duty to make sure we allow the rule of law to be the basis for any action in the area of human rights.
Francis, do you have the sense that even as a country, our concentration is only on the political issues, so that you have a lot of people bringing their voices on board when there's an alleged bribery incident in parliament, but you won't have those same voices even add on to some of the basic human rights cases that you take on, for instance?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that we are so sensational when it comes to political matters in this country, and sometimes overly sensational, you know. And then we do that at the expense of some of these very serious social violations. You would hardly have like the Catholic Bishops' Conference condemn some of these things. You would hardly hear the Pentecostal Council talk about some of these things. You would even hardly hear my own, you know, GBA, Ghana Bar Association, you know, talk about some of these things. And I think that it is unacceptable, because I believe when we do that, we are just being hypocritical. Like we all agree in principle that these things are wrong, and for that matter, we have a beautiful constitution that protects or that guarantees all these things. And yet when it comes to those violations, not only are we not doing anything physically about it, but we do not even go out there to speak about them. Because sometimes I believe that the advocacy begins with the condemnation of the act. When you do something and everyone speaks ill of it, tomorrow you would think twice if you want to do that. But unfortunately, these things pass without any major voice backing them. And I think that even though Shraj has been limited in its resources and all that, I believe one of the recommendations I would make moving forward, even for Shraj's work, is the education and the public, you know, statement on some of these issues when they occur. You know, despite even
in the absence of a formal complaint.
Yes, you know, that Shraj will come out heavily on them, you know, educating the public in terms of the laws that govern this. You know, you are not supposed to have done this, and this is the right thing you should have done, and condemn it, and you know, speak about them publicly. And the more they do this, I believe that it would enhance the education of the public on some of these things. And I think that, I mean, we are more prone to making a lot of, you know, politics than actually, you know, doing some of these things which are really critical to our lives.
Commissioner Whitall, is this something that the Commission can easily do,
Yes,
even before somebody comes forward to complain?
I was going to tell Susu that he's stealing my vision as a commissioner. It's going to be the case that that is the approach I want to adopt. A very fine, a fine line between putting out not condemnation, but educating the public on a matter of human rights, you know, importance, knowing very well that the matter may still come to trial for investigation, so that we don't make, you know, commitments that would create a problem when the matter actually comes here. So, but it's important that when you hear about police torture, like the KTI, you know, school, we should be able to make a comment on the use of firearms by the police. And what do we expect the police high command to do when matters like that happen? Because all that has been detailed, but we don't get to know anything.
So have you made a comment yet?
We are yet to make that comment. I was going to indicate that the new IGP is somebody I know very well, and we intend to make sure that comments that we put out are expected to guide him in ensuring that there is discipline within his command, his people, because there is too much going on. Same thing too with the army. As for other human rights abuses that are taking place, the traditional ones that we haven't yet discussed, we would engage publicly in discussing them. What is the importance, what is the role of chiefs, opinion leaders when it comes to discrimination against women? Because most of our cases is about discrimination against women. Female genital mutilation, and so many other things. Forced marriages, what is the position? We would put all those out as they happen, and based on reports that we have already, so that the public can know that the issues are quite serious.
Now that you've gone there, why don't we just, stay there?
Okay.
The issue of social justice in terms of cultural rights. You've touched on a few, but what must we know?
You see, there's a legal conundrum. I don't know what Sosu shares in it, but the Constitution of Ghana has enshrined legal pluralism. That means that the customary laws are laws until they are abolished. And most of the traditional practices are premised on the basis of traditional law. And so when the Constitution, as far back as 24 years ago, enshrined that harmful traditional practices must be abolished, we need to begin to find out, beyond Parliament, what are the communities doing by themselves, their own initiative, to stop forced marriage. You can't justify forced marriage on the basis that, oh, that is how our forefathers did it. We want to make sure that the girl marries before she's crossed by another man and all that. When you know there are health implications, there are educational issues, and in fact, her whole life could change. So these are matters that I expect that the National House of Chiefs, the incoming Minister for, Chieftaincy Affairs, and Parliament itself should begin to address. But again, I'll go back to the police. Law enforcement is a matter that is totally in their bosom. When they are aware of any such complaints or violations taking place, they should not wait and treat it as if it is a customary traditional issue. We need to know what they are doing. I had to give a paper at the Commonwealth Heads of State and Government in Malta last 2 years. So I did some research. It was very disappointing when I could not get more than 2 or 3 cases of forced marriages that had been determined by the courts. It was embarrassing. And most of them, they were under investigation, they have been withdrawn, and all that. Why should you allow a withdrawal of a complaint of that nature? We need to begin to send the deterrence across. Social justice for women, for children, must begin with law enforcement, must also be handled by the courts, and we all as a society must begin to move away from the fixation about customary practices that are not only dehumanizing, but are targeted at one of our kind, women.
Do you also appreciate the challenges that the police may have? Is it possible that you can do the investigations on their behalf?
No.
There can't be any kind of collaboration?
criminal investigations are different. They must do their own investigation. We do administrative justice investigation, human rights investigation. That is different. The threshold for building a docket to take before court is higher than what we have to determine in charge.
Francis, you've gone through the police several times. What Commissioner Whitall is saying is something that you're very familiar with. Why do you think sometimes they end up dropping cases, they begin very well, make all the noise, and then we don't see anything?
Well, I think it's again the cultural barriers that we have and the lack of education on the part of the many people who tend to interfere with cases like this. You know, there are many of these cases, you have chiefs intervening. Just, you know, and when a chief intervenes in a matter like this, even the police commander would just give in to that chief because he thinks that they are working under the jurisdiction of that very chief. Sometimes you have pastors and very serious senior ministers, you know, intervening on behalf of, you know, the perpetrators, you know, of such crimes. So I believe that it is just the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding of the right issues associated with matters like child marriage. Look at the witch camps, for example. You know, we've said so much about it. I know that Nana Oyelita led a crusade to abolish them, but in practice, if you go out there now, there are people who are still being held in some of these witch camps. You know, so I think that we may have to go really beyond the rhetorics and take, you know, more proactive steps. I believe that if we can have a collaboration of SHRAJ, Ghana Police Service, Ministry of Interior, National Security, and, you know, you can imagine if the president comes out to say that, well, I'm setting up a task force made up of all these people, and they are going to tour the whole of, you know, the north, and they are going to tour most of these rural areas to ensure that wherever there is a witch camp, we are going to abolish those witch camps. And not only are we going to abolish them, but maybe I've set up like some $5 million, which is building up a new facility or a new, say, shelter. And we are going to guarantee that these people are going to be catered for by the state in the next, say, 6 months, you know, 1 year, to make sure that we properly integrate them to their society. I'm sure we can get somewhere. But most often than not, these are not really the considerations of people, because we just talk about them. We are not really looking at the situation, and we're not really taking any proactive steps to address them. And so long as we do not commit ourselves to them, I can assure you that we are getting nowhere. Look at the DOFSU, Domestic Violence and Victim Support, you know, unit of the Ghana Police Service. What support do they have for the victims? Absolutely zero support. So you can have a case like the famous Obinim case, and these children who were involved, well, the people are still under the care of the man. You know, even though I know criminal prosecution is ongoing, but it shouldn't be this way. Once we have alleged that these people have been violated, there should have been a state shelter somewhere where these people are being kept, their education is guaranteed, their feeding is guaranteed, and then we use them as witnesses in the case. But unfortunately, we don't have that. So we make the noise, oh, we have to do something about it. At the end of the day, we do nothing about it. And that is where the problem lies.
You know, when I hear Francis outline the issues, they become so real, and it's almost like, you know, there's no hope. Is there?
There is hope, and I think that it's just that it's about misplacement of priorities. What is it that it would take to resource DOFSU?
What would it take to resource SHRAJ, for instance? Let's talk about you.
How much?
How much do you need in a year?
For instance, last year they gave us only 2 million goods and services. We only want 6 million. How much is that? Difference of 4 million. You are not given. But you can see an expensive structure coming up somewhere. You know, brick and mortar development must give way to people-centered social development. It's about time. You can build all the schools, build all the you know, health centers that look like, you know, hospitals and the rest. But if your approach is not people-centered, you leave out those issues that actually affect the people, you've done nothing. So we should have a balance.
I tell you what, until Friday, I thought you had a fantastic structure. And
Yes.
then I walked into it proper and I realized you need some serious renovation here at Trash. What's the plan? This is not originally your building.
But it would have been good if this building, being a historic building, if it is restored, I would be happy to stay in it. But unfortunately, for about 3-4 years, when the fire gutted the building, we have submitted budget upon budget upon budget to government to come pull down or demolish what has been bent, and let's see how we can raise a befitting structure. Because people come, tourists come to the polo grounds, the Kwame Nkrumah Museum, first parliament, where the Declaration of Independence actually took place. And they come, and that is a chamber that is bent. And nothing is being done.
It's a shame.
But under the directive principles of state policy, it is clear that the social objectives of Ghana should be to maintain buildings and monuments of historic importance. This is one of the most historic buildings. Do you want it to collapse before and what will you show to our grandchildren? At least we can still show that there was an old parliament. It's written on it. It just takes some small amount of money to do it. But we are hoping that this budget will be approved this year.
So this year you're asking for 6?
No, just for the building, for the
Okay.
bent part, simple 1.5 million demolish and cut away for this year. Then we can start the construction of the actual chamber and the adjoining offices, where most of our important clerks, in fact, I understand Prime Minister Buzi and Co. had offices here. All the top people had offices here. In fact, PNEC came through here. Some time ago, you could even see advisor, PNEC advisor, all over. So why don't we do something about a building like that? That would not cost much.
But if we talk about the budgets that you need to operate a Shrash, not talking about the reconstruction,
Yes.
6 million this year would do a lot?
6 million for goods and service. For assets, we have also submitted that budget, including the 1.5 demolition and cutting away of.
Okay. So at what points in the year do you receive? Because this is February.
Well, unfortunately, we have had a change of government, and so we are hoping that the budget will be read on the 2nd of March. And from there, we will know how much has been approved, and then we await cap in hand for when government will send to us.
Wow.
And that is the reason why the budgets of independent constitutional bodies should not go through the Ministry of Finance. Like the audit service, it goes straight from the Auditor General to the President and to Parliament. But for now, Traj still has to go through the Ministry of Finance and be subjected to budgetary cuts, ceilings, and all that. How independent are you when you are not independent financially? That is the issue.
How innovative and creative are you also, creative means are you adopting to raise internal funds? Is there room for that at all?
We can't raise our own funds because what they call internally generated funds, because the Constitution says charges services are free of charge. So you can't come to charge and expect to pay anything. No. If you are paying anything, take on that officer. But what we are doing is to talk to development partners who have interest in the work of charge, in the human rights area, in the admin justice area, corruption. And so we have quite a number of support from development partners. But they come in targeting what they can support, not to come and build your bench chamber. That is the issue.
Francis, in wrapping up this conversation, I mean, what's that one thing that's been on your mind that you want everybody to know?
Well, I honestly think that social justice matters are very serious matters. And as a country, if we are going to do well, I believe it's so important that we pay attention to the vulnerable in our society, those who don't get access to justice, and the matters of women, vulnerable women, children, the disability community, especially. 10 years down the line, we still have buildings which are inaccessible to persons with disability. This is something that we must crusade to change, at least because they are part of us, and we must make them part of us. And a host of
we still have lepers being kept in a specific place.
And it's completely unacceptable. And it looks like, sometimes, like you said, sometimes it looks like a hopeless situation. But in there, I always have some hope. I just believe that someday we shall overcome. And day by day, we keep working at it and trusting God that someday we shall overcome. I know that His Excellency Akufo-Addo has been somebody who has human rights, right on his heart. And I would be very surprised that with some of these discussions we are having, the government would turn blind eye to it. I am very confident that they are going to do something about Shraj. They are going to resource Shraj, and we at least the victim support unit, we're going to have some shelters that will be dealing with some of these cases. Then we can all be happy. As it is now, it's really a very sad situation.
Commissioner Shraj, when the president says citizens should not be spectators,
but should
that's,
be citizens.
That's good for you, right?
Yeah, that is very good. and just to add to what Francis said, the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection said something that gladdened my heart. She, on behalf of the President, Nana Akufo-Addo, on the 6th of February in New York, when she was speaking to the Commission on Social Development, she rolled out a number of policy frameworks that the government intends to undertake in advancing the eradication of poverty and the vulnerable people in society. And I think if it is true, and we see a reflection of that in the President's State of the Nation address tomorrow, and ultimately in the budget, we will be seeing our way clear in terms of an advancement on what Nana Oyelita and John Dramani Mahama left when it comes to social interventions and fighting for the vulnerable.
Thank you, Commissioner Shraj. We'll be looking out for details of the budgets. Yes. And I'll certainly call you up after the budget is read to see what's been allocated to you. Hopefully it's what you're expecting.
I hope so.
Thank you, Francis, for all the work that you do. I have asked myself several times why you do what you do. But
God and country.
Yeah.
It's a crusader.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. And to you watching us, we didn't come all the way from our studio to the Shraj compound to just have a chit chat. It's not just any conversation at all. It's because we want you to learn lessons from it, and let's all join Francis and be crusaders for social justice as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.
We thank you for watching not only this segment of our show, but the entire show really will come your way again tomorrow for another edition of the AM show. To my colleagues, all of you here, we thank you for doing what you do. We'll see you tomorrow.